Good evening, good afternoon. So first of all, I've made a small change to the, is this mic on? Can you hear me okay? Good. I made a small change to the presentation. I was supposed to talk about how candidates makes decisions, but that was just a placeholder from last year. So have you been here last year? You would have heard that already, so it would be really boring. So I thought I'll give you a treat, give you something new and fresh instead. And if you really wanted to hear that presentation, you can go online and you can view it on the Job Post YouTube page. So there we go. So I'd like to talk about something that was touched on in the previous presentation, which is that dark zone between employee engagement and employer branding. And do we work in recruitment or do we work in marketing? And can the two maybe meet or merge somehow? So I work for Glassdoor.com. As you know, it's a website where employees talk about their employers in public so that job seekers can form an opinion on whether or not this is the kind of company that they want to work for. So conversations that we have with employers are very much around this topic. How can we increase engagement? And how can we leverage our employer brand to attract talent? So I know Bill had some different opinions maybe on the value of the EVP, and we can see in ROI terms that it's actually helping our clients make better and cheaper and more efficient hires. So I don't only work for Glassdoor, I also write books about social media. And I have a copy of the last book with me. It's only 6 months old or so. So to Bill's point, I guess it's really out of date by now. But it does contain 25 case studies showcasing the best business use of social media, a couple of HR examples. But it's talking about everything else almost beyond Twitter and Facebook and updates. It's talking about how companies are using it in more clever ways. So I'm going to give a copy to the first person to ask me a question in the Q&A after. So I'm going to keep my presentation short and sweet so we can go into that Q&A in case there's any burning questions afterwards. So hopefully at least there'll be one so I can give out the book. Anyways, I wanted to cover a little bit about employer branding and then talk about some strategies, how you can leverage the employer branding when it comes to engaging with your audience. So one way you can think of the employer brand is sort of your attractiveness. And for the purpose of this presentation, I'm using a couple of references to the pop world. So imagine this is your group of candidates and they're all screaming for your attention. You are the One Direction, or you are whatever, the Spice Girls, but depending on your preference of music, I suppose. So obviously, the way we like to think about it and the way our customers are telling us they think about it is that the better employer brand they have, the cheaper it is for them to attract the right people. So that sounds like a pretty good and interesting proposition to me and worth exploring. Why is that relevant for you as an employer? It's because job seekers are telling us that it's important to them. Who wants to work for a company with a bad reputation? I guess sort of between us, we can easily think of a few companies we wouldn't want to work for because of stories that we might have heard. So that's not very good, is it? Even more concerning, I suppose, if you have a not so exciting employer brand, is that if someone else has a more exciting brand than you, your staff might be leaving you for them. So if you're on the receiving end of that, brilliant. You can pull people away from your competitors. And going back to what Glassdoor is all about, we find that people read reviews as a way to making up their own mind what they believe the employer brand is or what they believe the EVP is. So I think that's sort of where the two sides meet. Maybe what the recruiter believes is the EVP is less relevant. It's more what the candidate perceives the EVP to be that makes all the difference and what we should be working towards. So the way we like to think of it is that if you are not out there talking about you and your story, other people will tell your story for you. And as we know, this is how social media works. But we believe that you can be a part of that, and that's very much sort of the proposition of Glassdoor. So the last plug about us, because the stuff I'm going to talk about is sort of generic and applies for LinkedIn and Indeed and whoever else you might be working with. So there's a perception out there that Glassdoor is a US thing. Not so. Every month, over 600,000 times, British job seekers are looking on Glassdoor to research companies like the ones you represent in this room. We have a bunch of clients in the UK already. You can see some of the logos up here. You can see they come from a range of industries. So it's not just those trying to attract graduates because they're cool on the internet and stuff. You've got some really sophisticated accountancy, consultancy firms hiring very senior type of consultants. So they're also using it, as well as the kind of in the middle of the road, kind of the big oil companies and mobile phone networks or whatever. So Glassdoor has grown quickly over the last 5 years. We have over 300,000 companies reviewed on the site today. And that's really why it's important to you, not just because of the presence you may or may not have on Glassdoor, but for your perception in the wider ecosystem of perceptions. So the big question, I guess, is where would you start? What's the best way to get going with increasing engagement so you can leverage it for your employer branding purposes? Again, sticking to my analogy of that pop group or pop band, let's imagine for a second that you are not recruiters. You're not recruiters. You're actually a manager for a pop group, right? So we would very much sort of approach the topic with that frame of mind. So the first thing you need to do as a band manager or as a recruiter is to assemble your team, assemble the ambassadors. So we had some examples from Bill's presentations on how you can go about doing that. But it's very important, we believe, that you identify the clearest voices that you already have in the organization. So when it comes to leveraging your message on social platforms, who are the people in your organization today that already is active on social channels? Bill mentioned, for example, LinkedIn, and you don't want to have the same people saying the same thing. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about identifying those that are active participants, and I'm going to come on to the tools you want to give to them to let them tell your story, but with their own words. But first things first, identify those people that you believe could be good ambassadors. At my old university, this was very hands-on, very straightforward. They recruited ambassadors. Do you want to be an ambassador? So that's the way they attracted it. Some people are more subtle. In my previous employer with Daily Mail, they would approach me saying, hey, Chris, I know you have 10,000 followers. How about we have a conversation about what that means for us, right? So it's very much about you being proactive and identifying the opportunity for the staff to get involved. So assemble your pop group, the new One Direction. Step 2, you want to give them the tools to do the job. You want to arm them. In this case, give them the instruments, I suppose. So some companies choose to do this formally by doing training courses. You can hand out a document or policy documents. This is what you may or may not say. Or you can do a little bit more interactive, maybe a group of people over a pint in the bar afterwards or whatever. So it's all about providing them with the tools. So giving them the framework, what they can and what they can't say, and also showcase the best practice. This is what other people are doing, and this is why it's powerful. We talked about referrals as well, and that's another reason people are quite excited to get involved once they get that side of the story. A lot of people want to earn the referral scheme or commission, whether that being the T-shirt for free beer or if that's the trip across the Golden Gate Bridge. But what are you doing as an employee to help them make referrals to you? Well, one way is, for example, to teach them how to talk about you as an employer. Because the more people you have talking about you as an employer, the easier it is for their friends and networks to do research and discover what you guys are all about as an employer. So it makes it a lot easier for them to refer people. Because they can say, hey, don't just take my word for it. Go and have a look on sites that review our company or where reviews about my company is being published. And if you've done your job, spread the message from different directions, those sites, those destinations will be full of information about you, talking about why these people are working there. So it makes it easier for your ambassadors to be ambassadors if you've helped them spread the word. And the last thing is to obviously amplify the message. This is sort of social media standard stuff, I suppose. But once you've nailed who's talking about you and you've given them the tools to talk about you, you want to make sure that that message is spread. So obviously you can start with your profile pages on various social platforms, LinkedIn or Glassdoor, maybe attending physical events, maybe attending the recruitment sessions or whatever, where your target audience is sitting. Bring the developer up on stage. Have him or her tell that story, as opposed to you talking about why people should come work for you. Testimonials, obviously you can use that on your career site. One of our clients, Unilever, they have on their career sites testimonials from different employees. But then they also say, hey, don't take my word for it. Don't take our word for it. Go on to Glassdoor and have a look to see what people are saying. Because there's a perception that what's being said on the careers page is being manipulated slightly, and it may not come across as 100% authentic. But if someone is saying it without showing a glossy picture on a careers page, but rather as an unnamed individual writing a really thorough and good analysis of his or her work experience, people tend to believe in that more, and that will kind of go further in their objective of kind of creating this holistic view of what it's like to work for you. So we often compare ourselves to TripAdvisor, and the founder, the CEO of TripAdvisor, he sits on our board, Stephen Kaufner. So this is very much the heritage that we're trying to replicate. In the same way that a customer looking for a hotel room for the weekend is looking to form an opinion based on a number of reviews, so are job seekers doing when they're out looking for input and information about you as an employer. They won't just look at one source, but they will look at many and make a decision. So you might now be saying, well, Chris, that's sort of basic. I kind of get that. We've been doing that for a while. So what's more important now? You got the people engaged. What you want to do is get your employer brand to rise to the top of the charts, right? So I'm going to leave you with, I think, 4 points that you might want to leverage to push that employer brand further and let it go longer for you in terms of achieving the goals that we established in the beginning, which is the reduced cost of hire. So number one thing is to read what other people are saying about you. So it's not good you having your ambassadors running around talking amongst themselves or to their different pockets of customers, but also for you to take an active role in these types of conversations. So again, looking at TripAdvisor, every so often you read a review about someone that had a bad experience, maybe the toilet was broken or something. But then you can see the manager's response. Have you ever seen that? It doesn't happen very often. But when it happens, it's extremely powerful. Because the manager could say something like, I'm really sorry you told us about this experience. Had you told us on the day it happened, we would have upgraded you or changed your room. This is our policy. And by the way, all the toilets are being fixed, and so this will not be an issue going forward. That does 2 things. First of all, it stops others from complaining about the same thing again. Because look, you've already answered. There's no point moaning about that broken toilet again. And secondly, it shows the people that come after that you are listening to what people are saying and you care. You take pride in what people are saying. And if they're wrong, you'll correct them. But obviously in a nice way. So listen what other people are saying is obviously very important. Be a marketing person. Yeah, I appreciate what you're saying. If you're the marketing person, who's going to do the recruitment? But it's sort of, again, trying to find the happy middle ground, really. Understanding what is it that is attracting people to your brand. There's lots of tools out there to analyze sentiment on social channels. On Glassdoor, we use a word cloud to summarize the keywords that have been mentioned the most times in the good reviews, and a word cloud showing the keywords mentioned the most frequently for the bad reviews. So if you're familiar with the concept of word cloud, they work in the way that the words mentioned the most frequently are bigger and brighter, and the ones that mentioned less are shown in a smaller font, less important. So in a very quick snapshot, you can get a good sense. Is it the long commute that people are bothered about? Is it the inflexible hours? Is it the pet-friendly policy that people are the most... Anyways, the good things, great. Maybe you can use some of that, incorporate that in your job descriptions, incorporate that in your careers pages. These are the kind of inputs that you may not have seen or heard before. So it's kind of good input. And similarly, even on the bad stuff can be useful. A lot of times, employers come to us and say, hey, we don't like what people are saying about us on Glassdoor. Can you take it down? Well, I mean, we can't really do that. I mean, if people are moaning about something, maybe they have a reason to. Maybe you should look into your own organization to find out why are they not happy with what we're doing. Maybe there's a cheap way to address some of the concerns. Maybe it doesn't cost you so much to offer abilities to work from home, or whatever it might be. So even the negative stuff can be a checklist or a to-do list for you when it comes to becoming more efficient at marketing your vacancies. Third thing is about joining conversations. So obviously listen in, but then like the hotel manager, TripAdvisor, engage in the conversation. And the last thing I'm going to mention is to measure ROI. A lot of the conversations that we have with companies is around ROI. Even if they don't themselves know how much they're spending cost per hire or how they evaluate suppliers, we almost push them to give us a number, because that's the only way we as a supplier can make sure we're delivering what they're expecting. So let's work together. I mean, there was a time when you could put an ad in a newspaper and you didn't know if it was a newspaper that recruited that person or if it was that someone walked in from the street. Today, with so much happening online, there's almost no reason to hide anymore from not tracking or not following up on where clicks or candidates came from, and looking at the sources and understanding how much you paid for those individual sources. So measure ROI is absolutely critical, and I think we've been able to get away with not measuring ROI on social platforms for quite some time, specifically thinking about Facebook or LinkedIn or Twitter, whereas now, hopefully, moving forward, we should be able to look at all of those channels and make a good assessment. So I did promise a copy of the book. I know you're dying for a free copy. It's worth $16.99 on Amazon. So do we have a question before we wrap up for the next speaker? Gentleman in the middle.
Am I right in thinking that you get your content by limiting usage until someone makes a comment and they continue using Glassdoor? Is that correct?
So the website is completely free to use. You can browse around for a few minutes, but after that time, the website shuts down and it says, hey, if you'd like to continue browsing this content, all you have to do is register and submit content. So post a review or sal.
Do you not think that if someone's looking at Glassdoor and they're looking for a job, and therefore if you're making them put a comment on it because they're unhappy in their current job, then you're promoting negativity because the people that you're forcing to put comments on are people that are looking further?
That's a really good question, and that's one of the most common questions we get. Is Glassdoor a site for people to moan? In fact, if you take a step back and look at the whole ecosystem of comments, 67% is actually positive in sentiment. So it's not just a site to moan and review, moan, I suppose. And people, they don't just use it to look for a new job. They could be comparing salaries within the current organization ahead of a salary chat or whatever with their line manager. So it's a mixed bag. That's it. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.